Hey, Mama, and welcome back to Daily Bread and Dirty Dishes. I am your host, Mia Kay, and I'm so glad you pressed play today. Today, I am chatting with Charlotte Haggie. She is a resilience specialist for working moms and the host of the podcast, The Resilient Mom. Charlotte's journey into motherhood completely shifted how she views success, from hustle and approval to presence and self trust. Now she helps moms step out of survival mode, lead their internal world, and build resilience that supports both them and their families. So grab your coffee, take a seat, and let's dive in. Hi, Charlotte, and welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on.
It is such a thrill to be here, and I love just coming on to have conversations and hopefully change some perspectives as we have these conversations. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes, me too. So before we dive into your work and what you do, can you just take a step back for a second and tell us a bit about your journey up until this point?
Yes, absolutely. It's been an interesting journey. I was born in Zimbabwe, which I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Zimbabwe, but it's in southern Africa. I now live in Cape Town in South Africa. But my whole journey of life has been about people, and I think really about engaging with people. I absolutely love people. We actually lived in Mozambique for a year and we lived on a farm, and I have slight PTSD about being away from people because we were kind of tucked out in the middle of nowhere. But my journey has very much been about working with people to support people. And then I actually ended up, bizarrely enough, doing a personal training qualification because I was building a little preschool for orphaned and vulnerable children in Zimbabwe. And at the same time, I needed to make some money. So I did a personal training qualification. And I say bizarrely because I used to hate any form of exercise. I tried everything, but I wasn't particularly good at anything. And so I always got told at every team tryout, thanks for coming, but don't worry about coming back next week.
Oh,
But I was very adamant to keep trying. But I do think that that had a big impact on my life as I went forward and on what I do and what I see for people now because I noticed the stories that developed for me as a result of putting myself out there and being rejected, I suppose. And I remember at school being terribly bullied and really not ever wanting to see anybody else feel the way that I did.
mm,
And so I think my journey has really just been this amazing experience of learning through pain and learning through other people being in pain. And my mum always said to me, people who are a pain are in pain.
mm,
And, that's one of the things that's really stood out for me and has been such an incredible gift as a mum and as a coach and as a wife and as a woman, really, of learning how so little of what's going on around me is actually about me, and how the only person that I can control is me, and I have to let everybody else, and we have to let everybody else kind of go, and we cannot manage anybody else's emotions or fix anybody else's problems. We are not responsible for anybody's happiness. We are not responsible for fixing and solving and all the things of how people perceive us.
yeah,
And yeah, so I've really just gone through this journey of getting to a point where I was very driven, a high achiever, wanted A's in every class I ever took. I've done half marathons and I rode for my university, and I really found myself in a place of striving and
mm,
driving and pushing until
yeah,
I had children.
yeah,
And then I had this little boy. So we had moved back from Mozambique actually, and we came to Cape Town, and I was doing my coaching qualification, and I was running my little charity in Zimbabwe, and I was working to try and make money, and I had this little boy, and I spent my whole maternity leave doing all these things and a lot of doing because doing gives us value.
mm-hmm,
And then I had this little boy who actually said, I don't want you to do. I want you to just be here with me in my turmoil and in my huge emotions that I don't know how to manage.
yeah,
And that little boy has been my biggest teacher. He has taught me to slow down. He has forced me to be present. He has, I want for him what I think a lot of us didn't get was, what we are learning and what we have, and it's nobody's fault, but we have this gift of knowledge and information about what the child's brain needs for development and what we didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just realized that I wanted for this little boy something that was, and I have a daughter as well, something that was different. And I didn't want to feel rushed and frenetic and chaotic and miserable, if I'm honest, anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's where I am today. I am in a place, and I'm not saying it's perfect. It comes and goes, and old patterns die hard. Um, but I am in a place where I feel peaceful and at ease, and I have great relationships with my children, and it's not easy, but the chaos comes and goes, and I am able to stand firm. I'm able to work, I'm able to mother, I'm able to wife, and I just feel, such joy in the moment, and that is what I want for other people. So that is what I do now.
Yeah, it's so true how kids do. You really don't have a choice, you know? They're gonna make you sit with them and you're just gonna have to deal with it. But then it helps. It does teach you to like slow down. And that was me before kids, is I was always a go-getter. I loved working. I loved being busy. And I still do. And I still have these goals and these dreams for myself. But right now I'm kind of in this weird spot to where it's like I'm trying to fulfill my dreams and my goals, but at the same time, I'm also feel like I'm kind of at this standstill because I feel like I can't get a whole lot done, you know? But that's okay too, because it's just the season that I'm in. But I am learning to just really enjoy and capture these moments as best as I can. Because I know everyone says, it goes by so fast, and it truly, truly does. I mean, I was just telling you how my kids are still really young, 1 and 2 years old, but they really do just make you take in these moments for what they are because I know how quickly they're going to go. So let me ask you this, because I know last time we talked on the phone, we were talking about how life looked so different before children. And as you mentioned, it was always about the hustle and the bustle and the working and the grinding and always looking for the next approval and praise. So I would love to know, before having your children, what did success look like for you? And how did that definition start to change once you became a mom?
Well, I think before becoming a mum, success was very, I would say, probably externally defined. So it looked like that achievement. It looked like, getting the promotion at work, or making more money, or interestingly, one of the things that I noticed about myself was I was always comparing other people's houses. So if their house looked better than mine, or they had a bigger house, or they had a neater house, or they had, it was very, houses were the thing that I used as a comparison, as like, how successful is this person? And I suppose in a
Mm,
way, part of it was like the financial independence. I was trying to prove that I was capable and competent and could meet up with the people that I spent time with, or the people in my kind of arena, and in my community.
mhm,
And I hated it. I mean, I would walk into these houses, and I would have this whole berating story going on in my head about, how I didn't meet up. And then I'd come home and be like, okay, well, now I've got to drive harder. I've got to hustle harder because I want to be able to have this kind of house, or, it was such an interesting thing. And I think we all do it in different ways. And it's really uncomfortable, because that's what takes your your presence away. I mean, there you can be completely successful on paper, and still there's this unsettled feeling inside, this kind of, I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. If I do this, if I get to this point, if my house looks like this, if I,
mm,
you know, and it was interesting because also in things that I don't that don't excite me. I mean, gardening does not excite me, but I would look at other people's gardens and be like, okay, well, if my garden looks like that, but then I need to earn enough to pay someone to make my garden look like that because I don't want to do it. And
Right.
not realizing that we all have these different skills and
Yeah.
not thinking about the fact that actually could I be successful in something that's different to Jane down the road who has a beautiful house, and that we're all a very separated worldview. This is me as an individual, and this is you as an individual, and we all should, we're all trying to keep up on this hamster wheel of being successful and the same. And so a lot of it was driven by my need also to prove myself, I think, to my parents. I'm a worthwhile investment. Look at, I'd heard stories in my upbringing of what was valuable, what was worthwhile, and this is no blame on them. It was my perception and my take on what I had heard. And the freedom came in realizing that I had this internal chaos going on the whole time.
Mm.
And it was my perception of other people's perception of me that was causing it for me.
Mm.
And actually, we spend so much time worrying about what other people are thinking about us, and actually in the long run, they're not thinking about us at all because they're
Yeah.
thinking about what other
Yeah.
people are thinking about them.
Yeah.
And so my definition for success now looks like what works for me and for my family.
Yeah.
If what brings joy to us in this moment. Can
Hmm.
I can I give my children what they need? I want my children to go out into the world that it just brings joy to their lives and lets them know that they are valuable. And so that is kind of what success looks like for me at home. And then at work, it looks like actually, I mean, one of the greatest successes for me is staying the course on one thing.
Hmm.
Because what happened before was that I'd be like, "Ooh, this isn't working, and I'm not progressing as fast as I should. And so somebody over there is doing something better. Let me try that." And
Yes.
this is definitely a personality type, and we all have survival strategies. But that was my survival strategy, was just jumping around because maybe I'd be successful over there. Success now is digging this well and digging this well really well and
Yeah.
serving my clients to the utmost in this well rather than looking to see what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And, really just refining what is it about me that's different to everybody else rather than trying to fit in, if you will.
Yeah. That is so relatable. I mean, I think it's just like a worldly thing too, to where we define success as like materialistic of what we have and how far up we can go on the pole, you know? So we just find it from our cars and the materials we have in our homes, with our job titles. And I agree, after having children, of course I want to have enough money to be able to send the boys to college if they decide to do that one day, or just to be financially free. Like, that is my goal, period. But it really comes down to just the core of my family. Seeing my boys happy and laugh together, having a home that we can live in, that we can call home. And yeah, it might be tiny. And, yeah, eventually we'll want to get a house because right now we're in a townhome, but this will do. And this brings me joy of fulfillment. And I think really, like, that's what success is. But it is such a worldly in our culture of just grabbing for the next thing. And I also feel like when it comes to wanting to be successful, like you said, you're always seeing people all around you and you're thinking, well, they're making this money. Maybe I should go over here. Or, you see Anne over here who's doing this great thing. And, you're like, oh, maybe I'll be successful if I do what she does, and it's just like you're trying to grab from all different areas. And it just really comes down to you and your family and what makes you happy. So let's talk a little bit. I know we mentioned about being present and intentional. So let's jump into that a little bit. Because you've shared about after becoming a mom, there was such a pull of slowing down and being more present and intentional. So what did you have to unlearn in that season of motherhood in order to do that? Because that takes practice and that takes time and energy.
It does, yes. So I think that the learned, I just spoke about survival strategies. So I use a tool called the Enneagram in my coaching, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a personality typing tool that says there are nine different personality types, and we are born with all nine. And Jesus has all nine in him, but he lives all or lived all nine out perfectly. And we have all nine within us, and we as a result of nature, but also as a result of nurture, we default to one particular pattern, one strategy to survive. And we have access to all nine, but we have this one default, and we've got to learn how to kind of move around this map of the Enneagram. And I am a seven on the Enneagram, which is the enthusiastic visionary. So, lots of wells, lots of great ideas, and they all look exciting, but actually, um, I was sabotaged, or I am sabotaged by my motivation not to be trapped. And it was just so interesting. I learned that my motivation was to not be trapped. So all nine types have different motivations, and we all operate out of these motivations. And I also learned that I carried with me, so the learning that there were other people like me in the world, because also I found corporate employment really difficult because I felt really trapped and I couldn't understand why I didn't want to be in corporate employment when all my, university peers were going into corporate and I was really struggling with it. And a lot of berating myself for not being what was successful, not being somebody who went into banking or finance or whatever and wore twin set and pearls and high heels and walked down these beautiful corridors and, you know, did this job. So I
Yeah,
had this idea, again, that was for me was what was success. And,
yeah.
the women lived in the houses that I thought were successful. That's what they did. And so I tied success to this idea, this pedestal of what a successful person looked like. But then I also had these false identities that I carried. So there are numerous, and we all have different ones, but I certainly carried the good girl, and I talk about very much about the good girl syndrome that we live in. And I
Mm.
think all of us women carry this good girl syndrome. We
Yeah,
want so badly to be loved and accepted and belong that we will do the thing that taught when we were little, we were told, oh, well, you're so good, you're so good. And so we were like, oh, that's interesting. In order to be praised, I've got to be good.
Mm, mm,
And I also was
wow.
appraised for achieving. So in order to be praised, I have to achieve. In order to be praised, I have to be the responsible one. Or in order to
Yeah,
belong, I have to be the responsible one. So I found myself running around being good, achieving, being responsible, taking responsibility for everybody, whew,
yeah.
and
That's
and
a lot.
taking responsibility for everybody out there. And now suddenly I had responsibility for these little people. And I was
Yeah.
like, ooh, where is my value tied?
Mm.
What is going on here? And then I was in this tension between my value is tied to productivity, achievement, how well I do, how happy with me everybody else is out there. And my value is tied to these children. But also, I think in our society, being a mother is you don't get paid, there's no measurable, you don't have a KPIs to meet, you don't get any kind of performance appraisal at the end of the year. And so we don't see the value of our motherhood. And I think we live in a very difficult generation where we are there is this idea that you can have it all. You can have the raving career and you can be the present, almost the stay-at-home mum. And I do believe that you can have a very good career and a career that you love and be a very present, calm mum. But it's only when you're doing it out of a certainty in who you are, not out of those false identities. When you're doing it from a place of, I am good at what I do, I can set boundaries, I am certain, I don't juggle 1,000 things, I choose the things that I
Mm.
want to juggle. But when we are doing it under the rules of these false identities of the hustler or of the good girl or of the people pleaser, people pleasing is also an identity that drives us with these rules.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Our external chaos comes from our internal chaos. And when we're driven by those rules, everything internally is in chaos. And then everything outside of us is also in chaos. And it's
Yeah.
incredibly hard, isn't it? So I
Yeah.
had to unlearn all of those things.
Yeah. And it's so hard to unlearn it, when you're a little girl, you're learning all of these things, and then in order to unlearn something is so hard, and it takes so much time and energy. It's funny that you mention people pleasing, because that's me to the T, and it is very hard for me. I'm still trying to unlearn how to do that because I feel like it's just in my DNA. Like, it is so difficult. I actually, a friend of mine, we were talking, and I mentioned to her about, people pleasing, and how lately it's just been really hard for me. I'm thinking maybe it's like with the holidays and trying to see everyone. It's just really hard for me to say no to things. And she was saying how she heard on a podcast that someone mentioned, like, people pleasing actually is not about anybody else, but it's all about you. And I was like, huh, that makes a lot of sense, because it does come down to me. It comes down to me because I'm afraid to say no, because I'm afraid of what people are going to think of me. I'm afraid that they're going to get mad at me. Like, it's all about me, when really I didn't even think about that, because the title of people pleasing, you don't think about yourself. So that kind of like made me reevaluate a little bit and just kind of like look into myself, because I did not think of it that way at all.
So it's so interesting that you say that people pleasing is a part of your DNA, because I think that's what happens is that we give ourselves these labels, I'm just a people pleaser, or I'm just a perfectionist, or I'm just an achiever, or I'm just whatever, I love that. I'm just a type A personality. Well, that's like type A for achiever. But these things are absolutely things that identities that we take on for ourselves, that we are the only one who has control over. And actually, we are the ones who almost, what's the word? Not procreate, but we keep recreating them or keep reinforcing them
Yeah.
because exactly what you're saying, like for me, as a people pleaser, it's scary to say no. So that is a fear of rejection, perhaps, or a
Yeah.
fear of uh, a disconnect. So this is what happened is that we learned that in order for connection or in order for belonging, I have to please. So we then live in a stress response. If I say no, I'm going to experience a stress response because that's a tiger in my path, basically. It's like
Mm.
if I were in the caveman days, to say no is basically saying, it's a threat to my safety. And I want to be safe. So it's much easier to just say yes, because
Yeah.
then I know that I'm safe. I know that I'm not going to be rejected. I know that I'm going to belong. And as uncomfortable as it is for me to end up having to do all of these things and as exhausting as it is, it feels more uncomfortable to say no, or it feels more uncomfortable to not do something perfectly
Yeah.
because we believe that that is what we have to do to belong. But when we shift out of that and when we get to know, I'm actually just listening to the rules of this false identity, and this is my real identity, and this is who God made me to be, and
Mm.
I can take this identity into every environment I go into, then that's when we find the freedom. That's where you like, I understand that, okay, so and so might think that about me, but is that more important than my peace, my presence, my calm, my,
Yeah.
I'm actually being sabotaged by these thoughts. I'm being completely sabotaged by these voices, these stories.
Yeah. Because it's such a war on your mind, having these false identities, of like perfectionism. It's just like you are constantly striving to be perfect all the time. And it's so unrealistic, or with people
Mhm.
pleasing. It's like always putting everybody first before yourself. And it's exhausting and it's such a mind game. So let me ask you, how do you get your clients from where they're at with their, belief system to who they are and like who God has created them to be? Because I'm still working through that myself. And I know it's something that takes time. Are there any tips maybe that you can give my listeners to how they can help themselves from going from A to B?
Well, I think the first thing is noticing that you are being driven by yourself. I think that what happens, or I know that what happens, is that we think that it is everybody else's fault,
Mm-hmm.
or it is some kind of external circumstance that is making me feel this way. And it's the to-do list, or it's the children, or it's the boss, or it's the husband, or it's someone else is making me, something else is causing this internal chaos. But when we can recognize the story that we have about what's happening outside of us, all the things that are happening outside of us are actually neutral. They
Mm.
are, they don't mean anything until we attribute meaning to them. So, um, if your husband walks in at the end of the day and goes straight to the bathroom and sits on the loo on Instagram for half an hour,
Yes.
we sit there building up this huge pile of resentment because of the story that we have in our heads about him. Oh, and he has comes home and I've been working so hard all day and now I'm trying to make the supper and he thinks this and maybe he's got a really upset tummy or something. I mean, that's a terrible
Yeah,
example that
yeah,
I'm using, but
yeah.
you know, we attribute meaning to things that happen because of the stories that we have in our heads. So it's only when you become aware of the story that you have in your head that you can choose what you're going to do about that story.
Right.
So I take my clients through a short one of the tools that I offer them is the pause, and it is quite simply to pause.
Mm.
First of all, because we don't ever pause, do we? We are always
No,
going, going, going.
constantly.
Pause, ask yourself, what is the truth here? So first of all, you have to ask yourself, what am I really believing? So, and then ask, what is the truth? And
Hmm.
then unhook yourself from the identity that is driving whatever's going on. So, am I being hooked into the people pleaser, or am I being hooked into the perfectionist, or am I being hooked into the good girl? Whose rules are driving what's happening for me here? So pause, ask yourself what's the truth, unhook from the identity, and then I teach what I call my three-zone focus framework, which is helps you to simplify your life. So break your life down into three zones. The essential zone is the things that you do based on what matters to you. So those are things that you do according to your values, not what the
Hmm.
world values, not what everybody else says you should be doing. But in the middle is a tiny list of things that you spend the majority of your time on.
Hmm.
And then just outside of the essential zone is the maintenance zone, which is the things that you have to do, like cooking the dinner. I don't enjoy cooking the dinner, I have to cook the dinner. Maybe I can delegate it. Maybe I can have a system where I cook 5 batches of spaghetti bolognese in one go and then they're in the freezer. I don't know, but the
Yeah.
maintenance zone, you delegate, you systematize, it's things that you have to do. And then outside of that is the let go zone. And what happens is that based on all the identities that we're living out of, we shove all these things from the let go zone into the essential zone because we
Mm.
think that we have to do all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I noticed that I was doing things that were not essential, but I was doing them because I was so fearful of what everybody else was going to think of me if I didn't do them. And
Mm.
I was volunteering for every bake sale. I hate baking, but I was baking, and I was baking the things myself because it was important that I bake them myself and not buy them from the shop. Now, if I volunteer for the bake sale, I buy the cupcakes from the shop, I put them on a plate, and I take them. Nobody
Yeah.
minds.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we put so much pressure on ourselves. And this is what I tell women is that stress is a choice because stress comes from the pressure that we are putting on ourselves based on the rules that are driving how we behave. And
Yeah.
we spend so much time looking at our behavior. I want to do this differently, or I want to do more of that. I want to do less of that. But we don't look at what is it that's under the surface of me that's actually driving the things that I do. And if
Yeah.
I don't deal with those things, I can try until the cows come home to change my behavior. It's never going to happen.
Yeah. Isn't that so true? That is so true. Because for me growing up, I always talk about like my childhood, and I had a great childhood. But it's funny as you get older, you're able to kind of see some things unfold when you're a kid. So like for me, my mom, she did everything around the house. My dad was the breadwinner, so he'd always go to work, and then my mom did everything else. And I think seeing that now that I'm married, now that I have kids, I've kind of brought that into like my role as a wife and as a mother. And I also think that it's just like a cultural thing too, of like us women put so much pressure on ourselves and on our shoulders that we think we have to buy all these things for the bake sale when really like we can just go to the store, grab the cookies and it's fine. But we think in our heads, no, no, we have to do this. But does it really make us feel better to actually bake it and then do it? No, it causes so much more stress, you know? Um, but no, that is so true. And it's just funny to think about that because I mean I have so many things that I'm working through that I know other women listening are too, and I know that this is going to be such a blessing for them. So let me ask you this because I know that you also talk about self-trust, and we were talking about identities as well. So you talk about breaking out of those false identities and learning to trust yourself, I think is so important. So why is self-trust such a foundational part of resilience for working moms and any kind of mom?
Great question. I am willing to bet that every woman that you speak to doesn't trust herself.
Yeah,
It's a fascinating phenomenon. And whether it is to lose the weight, or whether it is to mother the way she wants to, or whether it is to do her job the best that she can, or be the best wife that she can, or whatever it is. And if you think about people that you trust, so people you trust are people you can rely on. They are people who speak good into your life. They are people who you would tell a secret to and they keep it. They are seeing people, you think about what are the characteristics of someone you trust. And then you think about the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we keep our promises to ourselves
hmm.
and the way that we do we build ourselves up or do we berate ourselves? And another identity is an imposter. Imposters are like, well, now
Yes,
I've got this amazing job. I had an amazing client who got this huge job, and she had an incredible promotion. And she came to me and she just said, I am completely in over my head. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not good at what I do. And, all the things that she was speaking, the stories that she had,
yeah,
ha had she said those to her colleague, would her colleague ever have trusted her again?
right,
No.
absolutely not.
And
Wow.
so, if you don't trust yourself with the little things, so I say to my clients, every morning when you wake up, drink a glass of water. and do that for a month. And then every morning when you wake up, drink a glass of water and walk around the block or whatever. Uh,
Mm.
Small little, what happens also is that we think, oh, I'm now going to go and I'm going to lose 10 kgs. So I'm going to I'm going to get a personal trainer and I'm only going to eat vegetables and protein and I'm only, blah, 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 all the things. And
Yeah,
then it's not sustainable.
yeah,
It's just not sustainable. And
right?
then our nervous system says, oh, well, there you go again.
Yes,
You've just you've just proved to me that I can't trust you. So
yes.
now our nervous system says to us, you go into any situation. So that client of mine, for instance, would go into a boardroom and she was completely capable, completely able to do her job, but she would go into her boardroom and she had a stress response. So she would freeze.
Mm,
And now she's in frozen mode. And then the good girl starts saying, "Oh, you see, you got to make this better. Now you're screwing it up." And then she'd go into fawn mode and she'd try and make it all better. And then she'd go home at the end of the day and she had no capacity and she was in fight mode. So then her children would come at her and she didn't have the capacity to deal with them. So she just shouted them and
yeah,
she collapsed into bed day, but the story again was still churning through her head all night. So she
yeah.
had cortisol pumping through her body. She was still in fight or flight. She'd wake up in the morning absolutely exhausted, go to work, and she was just in a cycle
Just do it all over
of,
again.
oh,
Yeah,
and because she didn't trust herself, she couldn't trust anybody else. So she needed to prove that she was worthwhile and valuable enough. So she did it all herself because
wow.
nobody else could do it as well as she could. And so we unpacked that, and it was so beautiful because we unpacked this and we managed to just discard those false identities and really get her to see who she is,
Mm,
what her value is. And she just took her agency back. And she said, I remember she said to me, I now have measurables. My
mm.
children have told me life is better at home. My relationship with my
Oh,
husband is better. My boss has recognized that I'm better at work. I'm more focused, I'm more involved, I'm more engaged. And, that is where, so I teach the trust triangle protocol, which is the base of which is trusting yourself. And
yeah,
then you can trust others. And
yeah,
then the third side of that is trusting the bigger picture. I am part of, instead of that separated worldview that we talked about earlier, I am part of a connected worldview. I bring something that nobody else brings. I am unique. My identity is something that nobody else has. And
yeah,
I can be this hand and you can be this hand, and we're not competing for the same space or resources or accolades. We're
mm,
both working together. And that is when families change, when workplaces change. Oh, so exciting.
wow. That is incredible. And I love how you just described how you went through that process with your client and was able to just kind of put it all out on the table for her to be able to see. Because that is just such a breath of fresh air. Like that just it helps so much to have another woman just sit down with you and help you discover all of that about yourself. And okay, then now let's figure out the next step for that. Because it is so easy to just spiral and for our nervous system to just feel under attack. And then it's like you just don't take that moment to breathe, and then you're just constantly going and spiraling. When you mentioned imposter syndrome, I was actually talking to my husband about this the other night because I was telling him, like, I have such amazing like projects going on right now, but I in my head at the same time I keep thinking, like, who do you think you are? Like, you really think that you're gonna do all this and have all these deadlines and like actually succeed in this? Because I do put a lot on my plate, but I also am learning how to manage it well. And I think that's what also kind of goes hand in hand with it. And um, having two littles, it is difficult because I really don't have the time to do a lot of things, but when I learn how to make the time and I learn how to handle my time wisely, I think that also is what helps me to succeed even more. And even like before having kids, I wouldn't say I was great with time management, but they definitely have taught me how to become better with my time, for sure. But with the whole imposter syndrome, it's, as soon as the thoughts came in my head, like I remember I got off of a recording and I just kind of felt a little down because I'm like, that wasn't the greatest recording I've had because there was some technical issues going on and I couldn't figure out how to have my notes so I could see, my questions. And I was kind of all over the place and I just felt a little down. But then one of my core values is my faith. And I had to bring it back to that of, you know what, like God has me on this path for a reason. And there's going to be moments when they're not going to be my best, but that's okay because I am human and everyone else goes through the same thing as me. And so having that moment to, like you said, pause, take a breath, and come back to my values for a second, I think really kind of it helped my nervous system and it really helped kind of like flesh out those negative feelings. And I'd say probably not up until like 3 years ago, I didn't know what imposter syndrome was. And then once I figured out what it was and what it meant, I was like, oh wow, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. So I'm happy that you brought that up. Yeah. And that's really cool that you're able to do that with your clients. Cause I'm sure for you, like that is so fulfilling to be able to see your clients notice those things about them and to help them achieve their goals and to get from this point to the next. So that's really cool. So you talk so beautifully about leading leadership, especially internal leadership. And I'd love to unpack that a little bit. You teach women to lead with their internal world instead of living in the reaction mode, which I love. What shifts when a mom begins to lead herself instead of seeking approval or external validation? What might that look like for a regular everyday mom?
Well, I love to think about us on this tightrope that we are walking as mums, with all of the things going on around us. And the only person we have control over is ourselves. And, we spend all this time trying to control what's going on around us. But for me, this idea of balance, balance looking a bit like I've got work on one side, life on the other side, that's not realistic because life is not made up of work and life. Life is made up of all the things that happen at work and all the things that happen in life. And also we take ourselves with us wherever we go, whether it's at work or in life, and why is work not a part of life?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, this idea of balance is much more the idea of walking the tightrope of our lives with internal equilibrium. So
Mhm.
it's not balancing all these things outside, it's actually creating this internal certainty and stability that allows us to walk on the tightrope of our lives, choosing we are juggling, but we don't have to juggle all the balls. It's choosing from
Mhm.
our stability, from our internal space, which balls we want to juggle and which ones we don't, which balls we hold on to and which ones we say, actually, for this season of my life, I'm going to put these down, or
Mhm.
forever, I'm going to put these down, and not to be looking over there at Mary on her tightrope over there and Jane on her tightrope over there, but actually, I'm on my tightrope and I lead myself across this tightrope, and then how I lead myself impacts the other people around me.
Mhm.
We can choose to be a product of our environment. So I get so stressed out by my environment. All of these things are happening to me, and my stress is as a result of all these things that are happening to me. But I teach that stress is a choice and that there's another choice you can make. And this is where you start leading from this actually, I want my environment to be a product of me. And when I show up in my environment peacefully, calmly, certainly, or with certainty,
Mhm.
then you'll notice that everybody else around you kind of starts to fall in line. And one of the fundamentals of this is ease. And I love the idea that ease, the acronym that I use based on heart math, actually, which is I'm qualified as a heart math coach, and we use this acronym effective at sustaining energy. And I teach through my ease over effort method. We want life to be easy rather than effort. If we're walking this tightrope, juggling all the balls, so scared of falling over, so scared of what everybody's saying about us or looking or booing or hissing or cheering or whatever.
Yeah.
When we can be at ease, then we don't give our energy away to everything that is going on around us. And we notice also that when we are leading ourselves internally, then everyone else around us is also more peaceful, also calmer, because the electrical impulse of our heart and the pattern of our heart rate or of our heart, uh, not heart rate, but the way our heart beats is chaotic when we're in panic or fear or anxiety or guilt or worry. And when we have that pattern reaches a meter outside of our bodies. So
Hmm.
everybody in your surrounding space, if you are in a chaotic heart rate pattern, they're going to also, if you think about a mum who's holding a baby and she's getting more and more worked up, the baby gets more and more worked up.
Yes.
And the role is to co-regulate with that baby, to be, because babies don't have the ability to regulate. But what's happened is that we've not learnt the ability to regulate. We've
Mm-hmm.
never been taught how to regulate. So when we learn, I actually have control over the way that I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I feel is a result of the beliefs that I have about who I am or who I should be or what the world means to me. Everything is neutral until I add meaning
Mm-hmm.
to something that's happening. My
Yeah.
child having a tantrum on the floor is neutral until I add meaning to it.
Yeah.
And so when we are leading ourselves without guilt or pressure or uh, comparison or whatever the case may be, then suddenly we have the capacity to lead. And it's built by working on our identity-led resilience in kind of moving away from identity-based stress. We build our identity-led resilience, and that creates this idea of executive resilience, which allows me to lead
Mm-hmm.
at work, at home, in my relationships, in everything that I do.
Yeah. That made me think. I mean, it's so true because when you have a newborn baby, they don't know how to self-regulate. If you're freaking out, especially being a first-time mom, and you're like, how do I do this? Like, how do I stop this baby from crying? It just makes that poor little baby even more hyped up. And that's like with everything in our lives, with toddlers, and like you said, they're having a tantrum on the floor. It's like, how do you self-regulate them? So let me ask you this question really quick. Um, for the mom who maybe has a hard time self-regulating, do you have just like any little tips that they could use? Because I know that helps me so much, like with my breathing, or even just taking a moment to just like step away from the situation. And this can be, regarding to like work, or in a relationship, handling your kids. Just any like few tips that you might have that you can just think of off the top of your head.
Yes. So, what we want to do, if we think about energy, an emotion is energy in motion. So, the energy that is in motion of, let's say, anxiety. We all know anxiety, maybe stress, anxiety, the energy that is in motion is that we have hormones running through our bodies. So we have this chemical energy, hormones pumping through our bodies. Then we have the electrical energy of our heart rate pattern. Then we have the kinetic energy of our stomachs churning, because what's happening is all the blood is being pulled from our stomachs to our extremities, getting us ready to fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And before I give you something to do about it, knowledge is power. When we know, wow, I'm actually in a physiological, I have energy and motion. We have energy and motion all the time, but we're not always aware of it until it becomes something that feels either amazing or uncomfortable. You know, if you need a wee, if you
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really need to go to the bathroom, you cannot think clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's its own energy and motion. And the problem is that when we have energy and motion that cuts off the circuit to our prefrontal cortex, that's when we can't think clearly, we can't make decisions, we can't be creative about how we respond.
Mm-hmm.
So we really want to reconnect that prefrontal cortex. And, you know, babies can't regulate because they don't have a prefrontal cortex and they just haven't learned that skill. Uh, and we do have a prefrontal cortex. So if we say, okay, I am going through a physiological response that has cut off my executive rational part of my brain, and I need to get myself back to an energy in motion that allows me to let my body know that I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is that nervous system regulation. One of the ways to do this is breathing. There are 12 elements of breath, and we often focus on the wrong ones. So we often say, okay, we've got to take 5 deep breaths, which to some extent will help. But the two really important elements of breath are rhythmic breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe 4 counts in, 4 counts out, 4 counts in, 4 counts out, and smooth, not like, but actually. So Dr. Alan Watkins offers a brilliant acronym for this, the acronym BREATHE, and it's breathe evenly, hang on, breathe rhythmically, evenly, and then he says, and through the heart every day. So the way to do that is to imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're picturing, you're now breathing this rhythmic, even breath pattern, and you're picturing that breath moving in and out of the organ of the heart, because the heart is where good, in quotation marks, emotions come from. You know, if you think about, I love you with all my heart, or, you know, he played that match with all his heart, you know, and you say, where do you feel happiness? I feel it in my heart or my chest. So if we take the focus away from the environment to the breath, to the heart, you will automatically find your body shifting into a place of neutral, a place of I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where you can then start and you know, we can always take these things further, but that is the most basic fundamental first step. And once you've got that done, then you know we there are deeper emotional self-regulation tools you can use. But you can practice this while you're watching the kettle boil, or while you're on the loo, or while you're having a conversation with someone, whether it's a good
Yeah.
conversation, you feel yourself getting into that state.
Yeah.
Just I can breathe rhythmically, evenly, and through the heart every day, and that takes me out of that fight or flight into that place that my body knows I'm safe and I can think clearly again.
That is awesome. That is so good because you can, like you said, you can use it anywhere. And I love that you mentioned, if you start to feel yourself kind of get in like this panic or, uneasiness, that's such a good tool to have because you can literally do it anywhere, anytime. Thank you for sharing that. I love that you have your mission and it's to build intergenerational resilience, starting with women and flowing to their children. What does that look like practically inside of a home?
Well, I think at the moment we're learning so much about how we should talk to our children, how we should engage with them, how I heard a beautiful thing the other day that talked about how we as parents create the emotional wallpaper for our children's minds.
Mm-hmm.
So we can either create emotional wallpaper that looks like and
Yeah.
chaos, or we can create emotional wallpaper that looks like love and belonging and acceptance and calm and peace. So
Mhm.
been to numerous talks where we are want to build resilience in our children, and these mums are coming to talks and learning about how to build resilience in your children and all these things that we should be doing to create this beautiful emotional wallpaper. And yet I hear the mum saying, that's all well and good, but I have no idea how to keep myself from
Mhm.
exploding
Mhm.
or reacting, or how do I do the things that this woman is telling me that I need to do in order for my children to be resilient?
Yeah.
And so we have to learn, because we are modeling resilience to our children so that they can see this is how I go out into the world. And the first step is for us to build our identity, or to get to know our true identity, and to let go of these false identities that rule our minds and create this noise and this chaos,
Mm.
and to be able to recognize, ooh, I'm being driven today by my people pleaser or my achiever or my whoever is driving me. And I can actually separate myself from her.
Mhm.
And, even doing that breathe technique can help you to separate yourself from the noise of that rule maker. The other interesting thing that's so fascinating is that our bodies and our brains speak to one another, yes?
Mhm.
90% of the messages between our brain and our body go actually from our body to our brain.
Hmm.
So we spend so much time thinking about, how can I think differently? How can I need to be more focused. I need to be more creative. I need to be more decisive. And it's all up here in our heads. And we're so worked up in the noise in our heads. But if we can go back to our bodies, we are taught to say to our children, wow, I can see you're feeling really angry right now,
Mhm.
but it's not okay to hit. This is one
Mhm.
of the things that we're taught in this beautiful age where we learn these things. But we don't say that to ourselves.
Yeah.
We push our feelings under the mat. So we're trying to tell our children, this is what you need to do. But if we can't model that resilience, look at one of the most beautiful things we can do is actually give ourselves the permission to feel what we're feeling, to
Mhm.
be curious. Wow, I'm really feeling angry about this. I'm angry about this because it's actually injustice.
Yeah.
And this injustice is making me angry, or this thing is making me resentful. And resentment is actually part of the envy family. So, what is it that I'm envious about my partner? That he
Mm.
can just come home and go sit on the loo for half an hour and scroll Instagram, and I have to do all of these things. And
Yeah.
that when we learn how to do the things that we're trying to teach our children, and
Mhm.
we do them ourselves, we get out from under the pressure that we put on ourselves, then they can also get out from under the pressure that they are going to start putting on themselves as they get older and want to belong and want to fit in and want to meet that need for love and belonging, and believe that in order to do that, they have to achieve, or they have to please, or they have to do whatever they
Yeah.
think they have to do.
Absolutely, because they're always watching us. They're always observing us. They see how we handle our emotions. And I think with the society that we live in, with it being so rushed and go, 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 I feel like it's so easy now to just push our feelings down, right? And it's just like, okay, I have a grocery pickup to do. I have to run and put these, send these books back to the library, and just all these things on our to-do list that we literally push everything down, and we're modeling that for our kids. My parents taught me how not really to self-regulate, but they've taught me that feelings are good. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to learn more about my feelings and how to handle them. And I'm so grateful for that, because now I can show that to my children and help them understand their feelings. But I love what you said though about, giving yourself the permission to feel those feelings and learn how to handle those feelings because, like I said, our kids are always watching us. Yeah. So for the moms listening right now, and maybe she's thinking, okay, so where do I start? She wants to be more present, but she feels so pulled back into the hustle, the pressure, and the guilt. What's one small shift she can make to, help her get started this week?
I would say maybe this is too big a shift, but the first step is to really almost create a vision of the person that she wants to be. Because, we do this interesting thing. We we want to have certain result, or we want to be a certain kind of person. So in my mind, this is the person that I want to be, and going backwards from this, in order to be this person, I need to have these results because then it means I'm this person. And
Yeah.
in order to have those results, I need to do all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But when we turn that around and we say, we go back right to the beginning and we say, what is it that I really want? And we don't ask ourselves this question. I think maybe we're a little bit scared of it, or we think that we shouldn't ask ourselves this question. Maybe it's a selfish thing to ask. Maybe it's a bit overwhelming. Maybe we just think, oh, I'll never get it.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I really want? And in order to get what I really want, what is it I have to do? And
Mm-hmm.
in order to do the things that I have to do to get what I want, who do I have to be? So
Mm-hmm.
we move the be from the end. So the goal is not getting these results makes me that person. The
Mm-hmm.
goal is actually being the person that we want to be, who does the things that we want to do, who gets the results. Because at the moment, what we're seeing is that trying to be the good girl, or trying to be the responsible one, or trying to be the people pleaser is making us do all these things that are leaving us with results that we don't want. You know,
Right.
relationships with our children that are not the way that they should be, unable to focus, missing out on beautiful moments of joy. So the first step is to really figure out what is it that I want, and then who do I need to be in order to get the thing that I want. And
Yeah.
then look, I talk a lot with my clients about agency. We want to take back our agency. And the thing that is stealing our agency most of all is these stories in our heads that drive the hustle and the pressure and the guilt.
Mm-hmm.
So, who do I feel that I should be? Going
Mm.
back to who do I feel like I should be? And what are the stories that are driving that? And what are the rules that I'm following that are driving my striving and my hustle and causing me this pressure? And then also recognizing that very often the pressure is our perception of others' perception of us.
Mm-hmm.
Or again, that perception that we have of who we think they think we should be in order to be loved and acceptable. So, yeah, going back to who is it that I really want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and what does that person do in order to get the results that I want? And then just building that awareness, noticing. And this is, little things that you can do in the day. That you don't have to sit down and write a journal for 5 hours. Just how would I have liked to have responded in that situation instead of shouting and screaming, or instead of, whatever I did. How
Mm-hmm.
would I have liked to have responded in that situation? And who is it that responds in the way that I would have liked to have responded? And
Yeah.
when we are operating out of our true identity, it's much easier to respond instead of react because the pressure's taken off.
Yeah.
So it's really, and maybe it is going to God and saying, how do you see me? What are the words that you would use for the identity that you've given me? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and and then it's stripping away those false identities and their rules. And the first step is just noticing them. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
see you there. I see you. And then you can say, once you've noticed them for a little while, okay, I see you, and I'm going to actually choose a different path today. I see
Yeah.
you, and I'm going to choose to believe this. And obviously, with my clients, it's really, we're getting really deep into those beliefs and digging them out and getting rid of them.
Yeah.
And that does it's also quite scary because sometimes when we've lived with these identities for such a long time,
Right.
it's like, oh, I don't know who I am really without that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to unlearn all that, it's like gutting it out. And that's
Mm.
a hard
Oh,
process to do. That is so
hard,
hard.
but also so exciting. It's so
Yes.
exciting because the freedom and the lightness that comes with just saying, actually, I don't need to live by those rules anymore. I
Yes.
can I can really choose. And when we choose, it's then you choose how life goes. Uh,
Yeah. And I think too it's very common, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's very common to sometimes not know exactly what those things are about yourself too. What those beliefs are. And I find it fascinating and so freeing when you do have someone to help you see those underlining things, and that you shine that light in that darkness, that dark spot. It reveals so much that you didn't even know about yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, for my job as a coach is to reflect. So I look at my clients as experts in themselves because they know themselves, even if they don't really. Subconsciously, they know themselves way better than I ever will. But my
Yeah.
job is to help them to, I'm kind of mirroring back, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Is that correct? Does that feel like it fits? No, maybe not, maybe yes. And then suddenly you have this aha of like, wow.
Yeah.
I have been carrying this belief that this is the way it is for so long, and now I see it from a different perspective, and
Yeah.
it's literally like those scales are fall off your eyes, and sometimes you do just need somebody to reflect things back to you and to help you open up your skull. And I my coach, when I was going through my journey, she said, we are going to get to know your internal landscape. And I love
Mm,
that. And we don't spend any, first of all, we don't give ourselves the permission to feel because we don't
yeah.
have time for that. And then we
Yeah.
don't give ourselves the permission to get to know we are the most beautiful mystery. And if
Yeah.
we give ourselves the permission to get to know ourselves, what an amazing experience it is to really, wow, that's really interesting. I'm actually really interesting.
Yeah. That gave me chills because it just makes me think like us moms, like you said, we don't have the time to do anything for ourselves, you right? And to be able to like take a step back and relearn who we are, like that is such a beautiful thing. And I
Mm.
love that you're putting that to work, and I'm sure that gives you just such fulfillment, being
Oh,
able to see that.
the greatest gift, I mean, not the greatest, there's so much that's good about it, but one of the most amazing things that comes out of it is that you end up being able to own your time. Because if you think about how much time we waste being reactive
Yeah.
and being in that fight or flight, you actually, well, first of all, you can ask for help, you can set boundaries with yourself, first of all, because it's when we don't have boundaries with ourselves, if this is a bit boring, so I'm going to go and sit on Instagram for 20 minutes. Oh, wow, there's 20 minutes gone. And now I berate myself because I spent all that time. Or a child can't find their shoes, and then you shout at this child, and then you spend 20 minutes repairing the relationship with the child. And now you've got to get everybody into the car, and then you are guilty, and you get to your desk and you can't find. I mean, to
Yeah.
get that time back
Yeah.
is just, then you suddenly find, wow, I finished all the things I was meant to do today, and I still have some time left. Maybe I'm going to go for a lovely walk, or I'm going to read my book, or I'm going to,
Yeah.
something.
That's a great way to think of it because that's one thing that people are always like, you can't get time back. But if you're able, like you just said, to help yourself uncover all that, you really are getting your time back because then you're not reacting maybe as you were. That's such a great way to look at it.
I think systems are vital. I love a good system, but
Yeah.
if we don't have the capacity to lead ourselves, we can't even use the system because the system, I had a wonderful client and she said, every year at the beginning of the year, I buy a beautiful diary or calendar and I color code and I've got time blocks. And by midway through February, it's in the bottom of my bag and I don't see it again until I clean my bag out at the end of the year. And
Hmm.
she just didn't have the capacity, well, same as New Year's resolutions, to stick with the systems that she had. And she ended up, she said, I'm just fly by the seat of my pants because I can't stick to anything. And these are the beliefs also. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just a fly by the seat of my pants kind of girl.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, you're not. But when you set a boundary with yourself that says, this is the system that I use, and now I can trust myself enough to stick with the system,
Yeah.
then it changes. Or this is the exercise program that I'm doing, and I trust myself enough that I can get up in the morning and I can go to the gym. Or
Mhm.
I'm not going to eat whatever I don't want, all the things.
Yeah.
When again, leading ourselves first, setting boundaries with ourselves first,
Mm.
and being able to follow through on sticking to those boundaries, then
Hmm.
we have the capacity to go outside and set boundaries outside of ourselves.
Yeah. And once we're able to do that with ourselves and it like ripples out to our kids and our families, that is amazing. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before I get to the last question?
I think, I just as I was talking about that, one of the
Hmm.
things that we struggle with so much is this idea of self-trust.
Yeah.
And I just think that it is a fundamental of resilience. It is the thing that allows you to say, I am, I know that I can stand by myself. I am reliable. I speak well to myself. Think about someone you trust. It's someone who speaks positive things into your life. It's someone you can share your secrets with. It's somebody who builds you up. It's somebody who stands by you. And we do not do that to ourselves. We just
Yeah.
berate ourselves and put ourselves down and tell ourselves we're awful and oh well, I didn't go to gym again today. So you see, I'm hopeless and blah blah blah. Blah.
Yeah.
And when we learn how to trust ourselves, things shift. And also, once we can trust ourselves, we can trust other people so much more because we don't need to control everything.
Yeah.
And again, that gives you time because then your husband, even if he makes the dinner wrong, who cares? You made the
Right.
dinner. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And oh, what a joy and a relief to just be able to say, here you go. I know you'll do it the best way you know how, and I trust you.
Yeah. Yeah. I can really see how trusting yourself really is such a big factor in all of this. Like, I guess I never really thought it that way. And it makes me think of like how you said, like, we are our biggest critics. Like, we are so hard on ourselves when it comes to a best friend or a sibling, we're so nice. We are always there to help. But when it comes to us, we're awful to ourselves. And you're right, like that can stem out to so many levels and just trickle all over our friendships, our relationships, our family. That's really good. So as we wrap up, I want to speak directly to the mom who might feel exhausted. She's questioning herself, and she's longing to slow down without losing her sense of purpose. What's one truth that she can hold on to, from this podcast today?
Well, again, you said she's questioning herself. So
Hmm.
isn't that interesting? I wonder if I trust myself.
Hmm.
And I would say that your exhaustion is not a sign that you are incompetent or that you can't manage this as well as Mary down the road is doing, or, you just, there's something wrong with you. I
Yeah.
would say that your exhaustion is information. It's interesting. Again, being curious. Wow, I'm really exhausted. I wonder what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give myself the permission to feel that and not just drive through. Resilience is not just, oh, well, this is how I'm feeling and I'm broken and shattered, but I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
It's that I'm living in this constant performance, this constant pressure.
Mm.
And if I really want to live my purpose, if I really want to also enjoy these beautiful, precious moments in this season that is busy and it is slightly chaotic, or very chaotic, and there is a lot to do, but I don't have to make my to-do list mean stress or the to-do list is purely a thing that the things that have to get done, and I can take those things, I can look at all the things on my to-do list up against my values, use my value-based decision making, determine what really needs to get done and what doesn't, what am I doing because I think I have to, and what can I let go of, whose expectations can I let go of that are mostly my own.
Yeah.
So that this is my life. I
Yeah.
want to find joy in this life. And what does that mean? Who do I need to be for me to find joy in this life? And what does my life need to look like so that I can serve? We women want to serve, and we have there's a driver to serve, but we can only serve when we're doing it out of a space of capacity, not out of a space of feeling drained and
Yeah.
exhausted. So notice where the pressure is, notice what the stories are, get to know that inner dialogue, voice note yourself, and then decide, is this the truth? I take my clients through a thing called putting your thoughts on trial. And so we
Mm.
say, here's a thought that I'm having. What is the evidence for this thought? And has to be fact. It cannot be opinion or,
Yeah.
hearsay. It has to be fact. So here's the evidence for this thought, and here's the evidence against this thought or this belief. And generally, what we find is that the evidence for the thought is all opinion or
Mm.
hearsay or my perception, and the evidence against that thought, if it's a not very useful thought, is huge. And then we can pull a verdict. Am I going to carry on believing this thought, or is there a direct opposite or another truth that I
Yeah.
can choose to take on as my belief? And
Yeah.
from then the energy that's emotion, I won't be in threat all the time. My reputation won't be threatened all the time. And so I won't always be in that stress response all the time. I'll actually be
Mhm.
like, I also think we have to be careful because people always say, oh, not people always say this, but a lot of people say, I don't care what other people think, which is not true because we all care what other people think because we want to be in relationship. We were made for relationship. And so I do care what you think, but to the extent that it serves this relationship. If
Yeah.
it's your perception of me that is wrong, or if it's my perception of your perception of me, which is generally the case, then also if you really care what someone thinks, then go and find out.
Mm.
What
Hmm.
is it that you think? I'm experiencing this uh, feeling about our relationship or about your perspective of me. We spend so much of our lives going through life thinking that so and so thinks this about us, and it's not even the truth. It's so ridiculous. And we waste all of this energy on something that's not true.
Yeah.
And so I would question a lot of what you're thinking about yourself. I would really take to court, take to whatever, take to trial these thoughts that you have and really start questioning what are the beliefs I have about myself and are they true or are they not?
Yeah. Isn't that true though? Like it's like we're infatuated with how people think of us and what people think. And it really does. It creates such a mind game for us. And we spend so much time on it when it doesn't even matter in the end of it. It doesn't.
And I think in the end, mostly they're not thinking about you at all. So
Yeah.
they think about you in that. I mean, I was talking to a friend at a party the other day and she said, "Oh, I love these parties, but then I go home and I lie in bed for hours thinking, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And I can't believe I said that. And did I say the wrong thing?" And I said, "Oh, I know that feeling only too well." And I went home that night thinking about all the people at the party, like in response to this conversation, thinking, am I thinking that they said anything wrong?
Mm.
And I wasn't. I wasn't even
Hmm.
thinking about them because mostly I was thinking about what if I say something wrong? And
Right.
everybody's going home at the end of the night thinking, did I say something wrong?
Yeah.
And nobody's thinking about what you said wrong. So, I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't remember if I said, no, I think I did about how with the people pleasing, how I mentioned before, how I always thought that it was about other people, but it was actually looking inward at me. And that's
Mm,
so funny. Like, I mean, we think about the things we're posting on social media. We're thinking about the things that we said, like, oh my gosh, was that stupid? Like, should I not have said it that way? And it's just like at the end of the day, it's always about us. It's never about anyone else?
completely. And there's that false identity again. I got to be
Yeah,
seen to be this kind of person. So, I can't have said that because then that means I'm not. We have these wanted and I want unwanted identities. So we're always moving away from these unwanted identities and moving towards these wanted identities. And at the end of the
yeah,
day, if you be yourself, you don't feel the pressure and everybody loves you because you're who God made you to be.
exactly. Yes, yes. Everything that you shared has just really made me reflect a little bit. And I just thank you so much for all your knowledge and all your love and support. Before we go, can you let my followers and everyone listening, can you just let us know where we can find you and how we can support you and love you?
Thank you. Well, I have just loved this conversation too. It's been fabulous. I have a website. It's www.charlottehaggie.com. Very easy. I have my own podcast called The Resilient Working Mum. And if it's okay with you, Mia, I would love to offer your listeners, I have a private podcast called Unfrazzled, a new way to work and mother. So I'll give Mia the link to that. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Pinterest if you're really interested. So yeah, just look me up on all those places. And I love connecting with people who want to experience a change in their lives and are just looking for a new way of being.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte, for being here. And I'll make sure to put all the links in the show notes for everybody so they can give you a follow.
Charlotte, thank you again for coming on and having this conversation. I know so many moms are going to feel really seen after listening. If this episode spoke to you, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a quick comment or review so other moms can find these conversations. In the meantime, I love you, you're doing great, and thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.